What's good? Welcome in, kings and queens. So we just witnessed the Seahawks go on a generational run and win the Super Bowl in dominating fashion. And seeing that, it kind of made me want to go ahead and talk about a generational run that we also just witnessed inside of Destiny 2. Now, I'm not talking about the game itself going from banger expansion to banger expansion to banger expansion, because let's be honest, bro, that Edge of Fate was woefully terrible. No. We're talking about the generational run of a specific weapon and its sheer presence in the sandbox, PvE that is, for quite a long time. It was easily one of the most sought after weapons and laid the foundation, in my opinion, for how this archetype of weapons should perform at their absolute best. And it was so good, Bungie did had to clip it and neuter it, but it had one really impressive run up until that point, and that's what we are talking about. So before we get too wrapped up into the mojo, let's go ahead and take it back just a little bit to the episode of Revenant. So episode Revenant kicked off in October of 2025 with one of the main highlights of it, at least in its marketing, was that it was bringing back Onslaught and that there's these new tonics to enhance your artifact mods, making them stronger. This was here to help you get strung up and geared up for the first ever contest mode dungeon that was coming with the episode of Revenant, that being, of course, none other than Vesper's host. And episode Revenant was the first episode in a long time to where the weapons that dropped from that activity being Onslaught and just about any new weapon that dropped with Revenant not being craftable. This is when we really started to move away from crafting, in my opinion, was at this point. Now, across all of these weapons that Revenant added when it launched, I think most people were probably hunting a Liturgy and a Bittersweet, both of them being good in their own rights, but not quite as defining as the weapon that we are talking about in this video. Fast forward to the launch of a really interesting dungeon, Vesper's host. After beating the dungeon on contest mode, players immediately started going in farming out some of these new dungeon weapons, especially when we got to see the purple for these weapons. Just about everybody was ball duping to farm that first encounter as fast as possible, and even when that got patched, people were oobing to farm out these weapons as fast as possible from that first encounter, because the Vesper's host weapons, they were just that good. In fact, there was so much farming going on in Destiny 2 at this time from this one specific dungeon that a whole little scandal broke out called Perkweight Gate. Essentially, the community had discovered that some of the main desired roles that you would want on these Vesper's host weapons were weighted entirely differently. For example, getting an Envious Arsenal bait and switch chill inhibitor felt nearly impossible, as those two perks were just not dropping with each other. And the other big time winner weapon that people were farming for was the Velocity Baton. This was the second ever area denial frame grenade launcher that we've ever gotten, the first one being the Lost Signal side of the episode of Echoes that we got to play with in the final shape. Now at this point, the community had already realized the strength of these air denial frame grenade launchers, at least in terms of building up your darkness transcendence meter on Prismatic, and definitely knew that these weapons were very strong in their own right and valuable, but we really didn't get to see the true greatness of these weapons until Velocity Baton came out, because this was the first area denial frame grenade launcher to drop with attrition orbs. And for those y'all that were able to get your hands on an attrition orbs baton during this time, we all know the sheer amount of orbs this thing was making was insane. It got its nickname, the Orb Printer, for this very reason, as no matter what, whether there's multiple targets, one healthy target, you shoot this weapon at those enemies with attrition orbs on it, you're gonna make at least 3 orbs, if not more. So if you were running a double special loadout, having an attrition orbs baton on there kind of just essentially made any of your ammo economy issues and woes go out the window, because you could just run stacks on stacks and special finisher, or just special finisher, and you would just print out orbs and finny ads and make special out the wazoo, because of this weapon was just making orbs so fast at such an insane pace and rate. Keep in mind, this was before we had the stat changes that we had in Edge of Fate, so there was no weapon stat that you would invest into to have good ammo economy. Back then, the way we generated ammo was through special finisher and Cenotaph / Aeons. I do not miss running that Anvil helmet. I really don't. So when we had this weapon introduced to us, a whole new door had opened that unlocked unlocked a bunch of new possibilities in terms of how you could play the game, use any double special loadout you wanted to, and have infinite orbs without really having to put any investment into any siphon mods, a heavy-handed, firepower, none of that. You just put on this one weapon with this one perk, and you were printing so many orbs. You would be printing way more orbs than a person who did not have this weapon, but their entire build was invested into making orbs. I'm telling you, bro, they could have on any combination of siphon mods. They could have on triple firepower or triple heavy-handed. It did not matter. Baton was making more orbs than any of those setups just by itself with zero investment, immediately cementing itself as one of the must-have weapons of the Destiny 2 Revenant sandbox, and the chase was on. Now, when the farming really was commencing for this weapon and people were just not getting attrition orbs or demolitionists hardly ever, this brings us back to the perk weight gate little issue that arose during this time, and why even still now, at the very moment of me making this video, a new player could go to Banshee and just buy a God Roll Chill Inhibitor and that God Roll multi-mod. Because of the perk weight gate scandal, Bungie just gave out free God Rolls to people, and they still haven't taken them away. They are still there. It is actually insane that these weapons have just been for sale from Banshee for over a year now. But one weapon that they did not give us for free due to this scandal was the Baton. They gave you the God Roll Heavy Grenade Launcher. They did not give us Baton. So back to farming, everybody went to get themselves a really good Baton. And for just about the entirety of Revenant, Velocity Baton was just outright dominating people's energy slot. It didn't matter. It felt like if you're not using Baton, you're kind of just hurting yourself and your teammates because you're just making way less orbs than anybody who does have it. And then coupling this weapon with Demolitionist as your fourth column perk, so you could just have a bunch of grenades and shoot, throw a grenade, shoot again. Just one of the best utility weapons I've ever used inside of this game, bar none. And the craziest part is that this weapon had other good perks in its perk pool. It wasn't just attrition orbs, but obviously that is what we were looking for. It did, obviously, being a void weapon, have the combination of destabilizing rounds and repulsor brace. And you know what's the funniest part? We got episode of Heresy in early February of 2025, and the Baton going into Heresy was so dominant, so potent, that Bungie went ahead and gave us some void friendly artifact mods, making the Baton become even stronger inside of episode Heresy. Yes, the most dominant and potent legendary PvE weapon got better in the episode of Heresy. Let me explain. So inside of an episode of Heresy, we had a really juicer artifact mod that made this thing even more potent inside of the sandbox, which is crazy. First one is Volatile Marksman, right? We had Rapid Void Weapon Precision Hits and Rapid Void Weapon Final Blows, granting volatile rounds. You've got a tonic. The volatile detonations would give you class ability energy. That's kind of cool. Maligned Harvest. Rapidly applying volatile causes your next instance of void weapon damage to create a weakening burst, aka you defeat some ads. Volatile Marksman is going to proc, giving you volatile rounds, and then Maligned Harvest is going to proc, allowing you to weaken with this weapon as well, on top of everything else it's doing. And then last but certainly not least, we had Void Flux. Defeating weakened targets with a void weapon applies volatile to nearby targets. Powerful targets increase radius of the explosion. All of these three artifact mods worked hand in hand with each other, and essentially in an episode of Heresy, this weapon was Void 3.0 all encompassed inside of one weapon. During this time, we were able to give this weapon volatile rounds. It was able to weaken and just spread volatile all over it, making it even better in its main job and what you would use it for in terms of like what enemies, those being more so rank and file enemies, and you are just creating volatile explosions, you're weakening, and you're printing orbs, spamming grenades because you have demolitionists on it as well. You just had so much chaos inside of this one legendary weapon. And of course, with episode of Heresy, we also got ourselves a new dungeon, that one being Sundered Doctrine. So we had a full-on contest event in which we got to use the Baton at its strongest point in time. And I remember very clearly using this weapon a lot during contest Sundered Doctrine. As I mentioned earlier, this weapon was so good for a double special loadout. I would be running this weapon in the energy slot paired with the Tanasha's Mastery in my kinetic slot. And then when it came time to do damage, loadout swap, be chill, and have what we were using, whatever it may be. I think for Zotek we used Sleeper. Yeah, we didn't know about how weird Zotek was on day one. And having this weapon specifically for that activity when contest mode was up, I remember I was big time crutching on this weapon. I was on solar lock, running speaker sight for most of the mechanics. So having that demolitionist was pretty nice because I was clearing out ads, I was making a crap ton of orbs, and I was spamming out those healing turrets for the team. Seriously, this weapon was such a vital player inside of the sandbox during this time, and I, like many other players, were absolutely taking advantage of it because it was just that good. It was starting to get to a point where, like, if you weren't using this weapon in your energy slot, it felt almost as if you were throwing, just because mainly Sundered's day one, a Queenbreaker was so strong, so you'd be using Queenbreaker for final, and most people were using some sort of an exotic heavy against Zotek, whether it was Sleeper, even though we didn't know that Zotek was weird like that. Maybe you use Grand Overture or Anarchy, and then for the first encounter, you would totally get away with using an Eager Sword in your heavy slot, or I know some people using like Thunderlord or even Queensbreaker. You had a lot of options. Point being, there was almost never a point to where an exotic was taking up your energy slot for the entire duration of the encounter. Maybe on final, someone would use Div, but I mean, you could just hot swap to Div for damage. Point being, this weapon was being put in people's loadouts, and it was just not coming off. It was that good. And like all good things, this eventually got clipped. On the twid of July 3rd, 2025, we found out what was coming down range. In the weapon tuning portion of this article, here lies the red ring of death for the velocity baton. Attrition orbs. Currently too powerful on area denial grenade launchers. Therefore, reduced perk progression by, count them, 80% with area denial grenade launchers. Then they have this other little bullet point saying this is surprisingly not as noticeable as it sounds. Now, of course, anytime patch notes for future weapon tuning or anything changes to the gameplay, buffs, nerfs, whatever it may be, reacting to it on paper can always lead to overreacting, or sometimes the exact opposite of just entirely dismissing something. So when this 80% stares at you right in the face, a little bullet point leaves a little bit of copium for the community to be like, okay, we'll have to obviously wait and see. 80% does sound bad. Maybe it is not as bad as it sounds. This patch would be going into effect with the Edge of Fate launch, meaning we were doomed from the start. When Edge of Fate dropped and people went to go ahead and play around with the velocity baton just to see how attrition orbs was performing, to our horrors, it was bad. It was bad. Going from 3 orbs in 1 shot to what felt like 1 orb in 3 shots. You can go with putting a siphon mod to complement your attrition orbs area denial frame, but it's not ever going to be the same. Bringing this weapon's generational run to an end, and these days we even have better area denial frames that you could use over this weapon if you still wanted to. Still an overall absolute sensational run by one legendary weapon that, looking back on it, is just so darn impressive. I don't think we'll see that from any other weapon for a long time. If you enjoyed the video, do consider giving it a like, and we do be streaming on the Twitch side of things, twitch.tv/kree, top link in the description. Big thank you to our channel members that go out of their way every single month to support the channel. It really does mean a lot. If you ever want to make appearances in videos, get a shout out here and there, just become a tier 1 member of the channel, my man. You have a great day, be safe, consider subscribing. See your beautiful faces in the next one. Adios.